All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever episode of Spotlight and Snake Sports Talk Show. We are your hosts, Jake the Snake Silva from the Snake Sports Talk Show, and over here to my right is the man himself, Darian Hopkins of the Spotlight Sports Talk. How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing pretty good. Unfortunately, I know it probably looks weird right now because you can't see my face. But due to technical issues with my camera, I'll get on sooner or later. But until then, we will definitely be on here. But first official, first ever episode is interesting. It's going to be interesting. A lot of topics that we have, and a very interesting topics that we have. So, what's been going on with you today, man?
Well, you know what? Let me just say I'm glad that this week is finally over. This work week has just been crazy. But, I mean, before we start, I want to give a special shout out. I've been posting this on my social media pages, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And I want to give a special shout out to all of the teachers in the CCSD program in Clark County School District out here in Vegas. I just seen somewhere where there was a row of cars and all of them were filled with all the teachers from one specific elementary school, and they were honking at all neighborhoods and reminding all of the kids that we're in this together. You know, and right now all the teachers, they're without their students and they have no energy. They have nothing really to kind of motivate them. So they figured they'd give back and let the kids know that they are thinking of them. We know it's a horrible situation with this coronavirus, but I just want to give a special shout out to these teachers and thank you so much for teaching these future kids and growing them. This is I know it's a hard time, but this was a great moment. But we are going to get through this all together when we work together.
Yes, I absolutely agree there. Knowing that this coronavirus is getting crazy, it just seems like the NBA is moving in the right direction because people are being cleared for the coronavirus, and then you have it like boom, Doris Burke out of nowhere gets it. So it's just really interesting, to see people still going out and living their lives the way they're supposed to, knowing that this thing is going around. And people just need to be a little bit more cautious. And I'm just being, especially for my city of Philadelphia. Philadelphia needs to be more cautious on this situation because I just see somebody promoting a party tonight. I'm like, really? You really going to promote a party knowing this coronavirus is going on? Like, you don't do stuff like that. So
No.
I just hope Philly can really understand how serious this is. And I know I don't want to be all political or nothing, but I just heard that they definitely the stimulus checks are be approved for $2 trillion. So it's looking like people will be getting like $1,200 per paycheck to help out with bills and everything. So yeah, so just please take it seriously as much as possible, man.
Absolutely.
So we got a kind of a jam-packed show for y'all tonight, honestly, because there's a lot that goes into these shows. So I mean, if you got the list up, you can actually go with the first question and we could get it started from there while I'm sitting here trying to promote it at the same time.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. So with everything that's been going on throughout this whole week, I mean, we're still fresh with free agency, and whatnot, but a lot of the talks are, and I've been covering this a little bit, and I'll be doing that this weekend as well on my podcast, is the current state right now with the NBA and the NHL and also Major League Baseball with their pushbacks. So the real question that we want to talk about is which sport right now that is in a complete pause is the ones that are best played without fans. Now, perfect example, Darian, is that right now currently the UFC have already experimented this with all of their past fights and upcoming fights without fans. I mean, Dana White made it perfectly clear that the show must go on. and I know for you as well as a big time WrestleMania fan, knowing that the event itself should be canceled because of how serious that this coronavirus is. But in the meantime, UFC is still promoting all of their fights. So the real question is, and we'll ask to all of our fans, is which sport is best played without fans?
Honestly, it most likely is probably just going to be UFC. And I'm going to just be 100% honest. But at the same time, I feel like you can't have no sports without the fans. That's
right.
I can't pick a sport where you could just do something without the fans. Even in golf, even in tennis, it's just the reaction of the fans makes the reason why we go the way we go, the way we do what we do, and how passionate fans are for their respective teams. I just can't see another like an NBA or NFL knowing they have the biggest events of the year with the Pro Bowl and the Super Bowl and the NBA Finals and the All-Star game. That stuff would not be possible without fans.
Right.
The entertainment aspect of it is the reason why we watch it, but at the same time, we want to see our teams win. And not seeing our teams win, actually having that experience, I can't see it happening for anyone. UFC, I can see without fans, and knowing that WrestleMania, the way WrestleMania is going, it look like it won't be a WrestleMania. So with that being said, I can't see any sport without fans.
No, and I agree. And perfect example, I think it was yesterday or so, LeBron James weighed in on his thoughts about playing without fans. And he's absolutely right. The fact that, without fans, there's no energy. And these players and all of these celebrities depend on fans to, lighten the crowd up, boost them up, it kind of motivate them because, it makes every player feel good inside and they perform better with fans. So, I mean, in LeBron James's case with him coming out and saying that, I believe him. I believe him, but I know that in a time of crisis where if this is something where it had to be done, I mean, the show itself must go on. I mean, that's kind of how some of these leagues and how they're promoting it. It's a tough double-edged sword for both the players in the league, but right now all I can say is I think UFC is probably the only sport without them because they can concentrate on the fight regardless having fans or not. But in some sports like WrestleMania, I mean, you have to think of some of these wrestlers. How do they get pumped up? How do they get energized? They can't do that without fans.
They can't. And they can't do that without fans. It is just, and people say maybe tennis, not even tennis. You got to think about it. It goes off, like the fans, like the players go off the fans' momentum. It goes up even with boxing. I still think you can do it with. I mean, UFC and boxing might be the closest thing to do it, but as far as fans go, if you notice, if you see the Wilder and Tyson Fury fight, look at the actual momentum Tyson Fury had with a crowd.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like Tyson Fury had that fight with, having the crowd react and giving him that momentum to still be kicking, Wilder's behind in the fight. So you got to think about it as, at the end of the day, fans matter in sports. You can't take that away from them. Even though that the NFL draft is doing it virtually, but it's still going to be a great show. Regardless, because you just never know what happens in the draft to make it epic. So with me per se, I'll have to say you got to have fans for certain events. Now the draft, NBA draft, NFL draft, stuff like that, you could do without fans. But if it's actually games going on, you definitely need the fans.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. And one thing that I will say too as well, shout out to all of the players as well, even through this whole coronavirus. What I've been noticing now is that a lot of them have been jumping on social medias, going live. And what's nice about some of these players is they get a chance to connect and talk with fans of all ages, because we know that this is a hard time that these players potentially are going to be playing without fans, but at least these players are thinking of them, they're motivating them, and they're striving to get through this pandemic right now. And hopefully we will see this to the very end, and eventually we'll start to get that energy back in the building, because I could tell you, I can hear the crickets from here in T-Mobile Arena, and it is just not the same without fans.
I agree. So having fans is definitely something that you need. You need it for your entertaining purposes, and you need it for revenue. Like that's another thing too. You need it for revenue. Like if you don't have any fans in your stands, you're losing money.
Yes.
So it's not just about playing in empty arenas. I mean, the players are still going to get paid the way they get paid, but the fans and the organization is going to be on a back burner because of not making no money from that revenue coming into the arenas.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what helps to kind of keep keep the lights on and keep the building running. And so without the fans really kind of purchasing for like tickets, merchandise, and whatnot, just to be at the games, or even supporting the team, it's absolutely difficult. And I feel for some of these workers as well who work close in sports, whether they're working concessions or whatnot. It's a difficult time for them as well, because these guys, I mean, they want fans. They want fans in the stands so that they can serve them and entertain them, and they make a profit behind it.
Yeah. You gotta you at the end of the day, man, it's all about money, man. It's all about the money when it comes to sports, knowing that we are passionate fans and passionate analysts. But at the end of the day, it's all about revenue. It's all about revenue and what you're going to bring to that, for these fans to spend their hard-earned money. Mm-hmm. So speaking of that, we definitely want to go into the next question, because I think this is a very interesting question. And the question was, have we seen the last of Antonio Brown in the NFL? And the reason why, and I know a lot of people from the Spotlight Sports Talk crew know that I say I don't like to mention Antonio Brown on my show anymore, but I seen this radio show where Bruce Arians was on it, and he said that Antonio Brown was never going to the Buccaneers. He was never coming there. He's just not a good fit in the locker room. So when I was watching First Take today and it was talking something about this, I agreed with, Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith, but I really agreed more with Stephen A. Smith because of, you cannot trust this guy. Mm-hmm. You can't trust him because of the fact that he recorded John Gruden's conversation. Right. That was just over the hill for me. Like, because you're not even supposed to record. For what I've seen in LA, you're not allowed to record phone calls without permission. So that's a felony. And I didn't see nothing happen, but he had the allegations with the sexual harassment, and then he had problems in Pittsburgh, and then he tried to throw Mike Tomlin under the bus. He tried to throw John Gruden and Mike Mayock under the bus, like he wasn't the problem. And then I kind of understood with what Max Kellerman was saying, because Max Kellerman said that he needs to change for himself. He just doesn't need to change to get back in the NFL. He needs to change as a person, because Antonio Brown puts the blame on everybody else on why everything went wrong with him and why he's not in the NFL. And you had your chances at the end of the day. You had your chances, and you messed up each and every time you was on a team. So how can people in the locker room trust you to be a leader, to be a vocal person in a positive way, knowing that you just give people headaches, bruh? And then even if you do decide to get back into the NFL, you still have legal action towards you. Even though when you sign a contract, you're still going to miss time. And do any team wants to pick up that? Teams rather pick up a fresh wide receiver out of the draft right now before they go pick up Antonio Brown, because it's a clean slate with a new person coming out of college, instead of bringing on somebody that's so toxic and so negative and thinks that it's all about him. Mm-hmm. No, it's not all about you. There's no I in team. there's no iron team, and that's my problem with Antonio Brown. But I definitely think that he does not have a shot back in the NFL.
No, and I agree. And here's what I'm gonna say, because I ended up saying this to everybody, and I even said this up on my podcast show. Him potentially going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was never going to happen. Okay, it was never going to happen because the fact that he not only just, having to compete with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, but the fact of getting the trust gained back to getting back into the NFL. And that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And the fact that, he expressed himself to the NFL and to Roger Goodell, and how he expressed about Ben Roethlisberger, John Gruden, Mike Mayock, and everybody in the Raiders organization, you just know that this man is completely out of his mind. I think the cheese has slid off his cracker, but the honesty about this is, look, when Antonio Brown came into this league, he was a 6th-round pick.
Sure was.
6th-round pick. And what people said before emerging in this league, he was the hardest working Pittsburgh Steeler. He had to grind on a daily just to make a starting spot on that roster.
I agree.
And being able to do that, he put in a lot of time and he put in a lot of effort, and he kept his nose clean through everything. And you have to think about it. Nobody since had spoke ill of this man. Not Mike Tomlin, not Big Ben, not even Juju Smith-Schuster at the time. So when it came that time that Antonio Brown, we all know about what happened with Le'Veon Bell. Okay, Le'Veon Bell wanted to get his. Obviously, in this league, what's unfortunate, because running backs don't get enough love anymore. It used to be different in a different time and a different era. But running backs right now are not as valued as people think. Right now, it's quarterbacks are valued. Surprisingly, wide receivers are.
Yeah.
Which is, and I'm sure that part of that has to deal with the rule changes with as far as the pass interference calls and whatnot. And I think that's why it's boosting all these wide receiver values. But you're absolutely right. Why would people want to take in Antonio Brown? And like we mentioned and we talked about it with this draft, there are 50 wide receivers coming in. So offensive weaponries come and go all the time. But quarterbacks, because they're the faces of the franchise, those are the ones that have the longer longevity. I mean, good God, kickers have longevities. But for Antonio Brown and the actions that he's implemented, I mean, it has become a stain of his career, with the fact that now, like, here's the saying, you reap what you sow. So the fact that his mindset is not right, it destroys the connections and the relationships that he's had with people within the league and with organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have to agree. It's just that I don't know what happened. I knew something was going on with Antonio Brown once he did not play in the last game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mm-hmm. He was on the sideline, and he didn't even stay for the whole game.
Right.
So you telling me you don't have no type of suspension, no type of injury, and you're on the sideline with the team, but you're not playing for the team? No, I don't want anybody like that in my locker room. But I thought, coming to Oakland at the time, it would be a clean slate. We gave this guy an extension that he didn't even play for and didn't try to get agreements after we released him. You never played a down in that uniform. Right. So with that being said, no, that's just not. It just doesn't make sense to me. And Damian Estrada said it's a chance of him playing in XFL to the NFL. No.
Not even anywhere.
He's not going to play anywhere, not because of his talent. It's because of his off the field antics. It's just like what it was when what is his name? Like Terrell Owens.
Oh yeah.
Terrell Owens is the prime example of this. But after watching My Football Life on Terrell Owens, he had reasons why he did what he did. Mm-hmm. Antonio Brown is doing this for attention. You put in letters of the Raiders suspending you or giving you a fine. You putting that documentation on a public forum. That's just not cool. That's like saying, "Oh, we gonna put your baby mom on a public forum while she's butt naked."
Right.
Like, come on. Like, it's just some stuff that just not need to be on a public forum. If you're doing it to take action in a positive light, it makes sense. But you sitting here doing all this unnecessary stuff, and now you're from the outside looking in.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's what's kind of the difference between Antonio Brown and Terrell Owens. Okay, Antonio Brown, when you watched what was it? Oh, good God. Hard Knocks. When you watch Hard Knocks, okay, the fact that Antonio Brown was dealing with a frozen foot, Terrell Owens was working out at his house with a broken leg.
Sure was.
He was working out at his house with a broken leg.
Because the thing about it is, Terrell Owens just wanted to help his team, but in some ways, I'm actually the link is in the description. Gridiron Blitz. The link is in the description of Snake Sports Talk Show. The link is in the description, bro. So his Instagram and his Twitter as well. But as I can say it is this: Terrell Owens was an issue off the field. He did have problems with his quarterback, but when it came to him being on the field, you could not tell Terrell Owens nothing.
Right.
You couldn't tell him a goddamn thing. But the thing about Terrell Owens is that Terrell Owens really didn't get into much legal action problems either. Like as far as with the actual league, it was just with teams that he was on. He just argued with the quarterback and the offensive coordinator and the coach. That's all he really did because he was so passionate about the game. So I found a reason why they finally decided to put him in the Hall of Fame because of what he did on the field. But it's the difference of what you're doing on the field and what you're doing to make what you're doing against your team. Terrell Owens was never an I person. It made it look like it, but he was never an I person. Even when he defended Romo, that's my quarterback. You'll never hear Antonio Brown say some stuff like that, nor all the antics that he has.
Exactly. And yeah, absolutely. And that's where, like, with Terrell Owens, like, and I'm glad that he's up in the Hall of Fame as well, because you're absolutely right. All the activity was all coming on the field. There was nothing in there that said, Terrell Owens ended up, abusing somebody or, a domestic battery on anybody else, so he kept his nose clean off the field. But when it came to on the field, you're absolutely right. He's very passionate about the game. He's passionate about the game, and he'll call it out. He'll call it out to the offensive coordinator. He'll call it out to the coach, and he'll call it out to the quarterback. If there is something he sees that's not right, of course he's going to speak it out. And that's where I think that when it comes to a level of accountability, I think that was kind of something that Terrell Owens was really voicing his opinion out. Now, of course,
He did take some accountability for what but the problem with Antonio Brown, he's not going to take no accountability for his actions.
He takes no accountability. No, absolutely not. And oh God, Damian Estrada, you mentioned AB is Pac-Man Jones. Well, hold on.
I disagree with that.
Pac-Man was a completely different level than what Antonio Brown is. Not even close.
Pac-Man was just around the wrong people while he got the fame that he got. He was just around the wrong people.
I mean, think about it. This man was almost close to ruining his career. He was almost close to ruining his career. He would have never gotten a gig in the NFL. Now, it's not to say that Antonio Brown, it could have been the same thing, but this was a completely different level. A lot of people were pissed with Pac-Man. But, with Antonio Brown, we know that there are a lot of things that he has to clean up, and all of that starts with self-examination. And I've said this, I loved Antonio Brown's skills on the field. No question. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. But the fact that he's in a situation where his mind is not right, and I'm sure maybe it's just like a cry for help, But this is where I'm like, AB, go to a therapist. Like, self-examine yourself.
Right.
Because Key in the building as well. I mean, Key is also one of our great sports talk people here with our show as well. And you mentioned that it's wasted talent. Absolutely. And here's what's kind of interesting. I ended up talking about John Bones Jones, because John Jones could not get off the dope. But
we definitely. I know you got that as a topic.
Well, I mean, you have to think about it. John Jones was such a damn good talent.
He sure was.
He was, and here's what made me respect him. Years ago, I think it was like his 5th or 6th career fight. He was on his way to a fight, and then there was a burglar that stumbled across him, and not knowing who John Jones was, he got his ass kicked, and he fought him. They end up going and turning him in, and then John Jones goes to his fight and retained his belt. That made me respect that man. Seriously. Like, I never met anybody, any fighter or any athlete who's been able to overcome that. But aside from that, with all the activities that were off the octagon, activities off the field, it just kind of it sheds the light of and shows your true colors of the type of person you are.
Yeah, I mean, John Jones, knowing that I really don't follow UFC enough, but I knew who John Jones was. And just to see him, make that mistake and stay off doing the drug abuse and stuff like that, he needs to go get help as well. So I really don't know too much about, John Jones, but I know that he's a special talent. He's a special talent from what I've seen. So
absolutely, a one of a kind. I mean, the guy's been winning the 13 straight fights. The like maybe one of the best fighters in that division class of the light heavyweight. Like it's incredible. Like, again, I think he's the greatest fighter, but in his personal life, there's a lot of work.
Absolutely, and that's it's just like the Antonio Brown's like topic that we just talked about. It's just the same thing. It's just that, and I can't say this. I can say this. But I'm going to say it anyway. I wasn't going to say it, but I'm going to say it. I think Antonio Brown's on drugs too.
I believe it.
I really think that this guy is on drugs, because there's no way you go from being arguably the best receiver in the league to being forgotten.
Yeah, and your mind is completely out of whack, where it's making you think. Honestly, it's like you would think this man would be a rational adult, but I mean, he's now got the mind of like a 6-year-old. Seriously. But, Key in the building mentioned same for Josh Gordon. Yeah, but Josh Gordon, though, I mean.
Josh Gordon was different.
But I think at that time it was all about, the weed.
Yeah, it was definitely from the weed. I definitely have to say that as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And mentioning the hit from Vontaze Burfict. Oh, God.
Now, the hit from Vontaze Burfict was a little different.
Yeah, because the hit on Vontaze Burfict, look, I don't know where anybody found this guy, but I know that he's been playing in the California Penal League, because you're not out there to snipe everybody, left and right. That man should be banned from the NFL. That's just my opinion.
All right, so we definitely got it there. Just let me know if y'all do hear an echo in the audio. Just let us know if you do hear an echo. If you don't, that's a good thing. I don't know where the echo is coming from. I think it's coming from me. So when I do stop talking, I am going to put my mic on mute just to make sure. But yeah. So what's the other topics that we have for tonight, bruh?
Well, here's what one topic that we're going to talk about is, first of all, it has to deal with Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles. So the question is, how should Carson Wentz feel about not getting DeAndre Hopkins? Now, for those of us up to speed, we know we had the free agency and DeAndre Hopkins gets traded to the Arizona Cardinals for 2nd and 4th round pick. And we all discussed about the deal. The deal was absolutely outrageous, ridiculous, and Houston, for whatever reason, just went with like the first offer given to them, and apparently that was their bargain. But for the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, in my opinion, with Carson Wentz, to be honest, um, you still have to think of the weapons that Philadelphia has. Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, honestly, JJ Arcega Whiteside. I mean, I've seen a couple of clips of him playing as well. And I think I'm not saying he's a potential superstar, but I think he'll get into a role with Philadelphia. But here's the thing. I've said this multiple times to Eagles fans, if you guys are here in our live show in the comments, but Carson Wentz is your future. Carson Wentz is your franchise quarterback. He's your franchise quarterback for the next 5 years. I don't care what anybody says. Because listen, what could Carson Wentz do all throughout last season? The fact that both of the star wide receivers were hurt. Nelson Aguilar, for whatever reason, they couldn't stick him in his hands to catch every hard ball thrown to him. You know, it was just an interesting story with the Philadelphia Eagles. And me personally, I was able to talk with Jalen Mills, and knowing that they grinded that much throughout the season and still made the playoffs. They still managed to make the playoffs under a dysfunctional, Dallas Cowboys team, which I know they're going to go through some stuff. But even them, Washington rebuilding, the Giants potentially rebuilding as well. The Eagles still got it done. So to me, I don't truly think that Carson Wentz is really worried. I think the fact of the matter is he's just worried about people staying healthy. I mean, that should be the biggest concern. What do you think?
My thing is this, and I'm just going to be 100% honest here, because Carson Wentz, even when I listened to Drew Rosenhaus when he was on a radio station, I forgot what radio station that he was on, but I did hear Drew Rosenhaus said that draft picks comes into play, and what they was not trying to offer, what the Texans was trying to offer. At the end of the day, DeAndre Hopkins got dealt with a bargain. He got dealt with a bargain. And I feel as though the Eagles should have went out and go get him. Don't get me wrong, Alshon Jeffrey is there, but he can never stay on the field. Deshaun Jackson missed 13 games. The second best receiver was Miles Sanders, and that's a running back. And that's just not great. I feel as though you pay top dollar for your wide receiver. Go out and pay not for your wide receiver, your quarterback. Go out and pay top dollar for that one wide receiver. And DeAndre Hopkins was bargained so low that the Eagles had so many chances to go out and get a DeAndre Hopkins. If I knew that the Arizona Cardinals was just going to send a pick and some peanuts for a guy that never drops the ball, I would have been telling the Raiders, what the hell are you doing?
Right.
That's what I would have been saying. But the Eagles had a chance. It was rumors that Eagles wanted to go get him, but they did not pull the trigger. And I felt as though they could have pulled the trigger and got DeAndre Hopkins. Because if you think about it, it would make Carson Wentz so much better because he has a reliable receiver in the caliber that DeAndre Hopkins is.
No, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. I mean, look, we're talking about DeAndre Hopkins here. I mean, a guy that literally doesn't drop a whole lot of passes. Sorry there, Nelson Aguilar. But, the thing of it is, and I could have seen that potentially happening where, Carson Wentz's value would be even bigger than where it stands at right now. But, I just think that it was kind of interesting throughout that whole trade and the bargain that the Arizona Cardinals ended up getting, and giving up. And I mean, for me, the other thing though too is that we have to think about was parts of the offensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles was hurt. They were banged up, and that's what was kind of hard with Carson Wentz. And listen, we did see a full season of Carson Wentz play, which was great. But I think the one thing is that I'm sure for most Philadelphia fans is, when are we finally going to see him play in the playoffs? They've seen him like shortcuts in the playoffs. Then he gets hurt, and then the season apparently, is not rolling for them, and it's just series of bad luck. But again, I do have a topic here, and we'll get to that later. But I just think that you're right. I think that it could have boosted Carson Wentz's value, and then it keeps the insurance of both Carson and the Philadelphia Eagles intact, knowing that he's got a star wide receiver. That's not just necessarily saving him, but it's letting them know that guarantee of that money when you're paying for a franchise quarterback is like it's valid. It's valid for me. Nope. Uh, Hold on, be patient, everybody. We got a little bit of some technical difficulties here.
My bad, my bad. I was
No
off.
worries.
I was off the mute. I'm sorry, but
No worries.
I was on the mute. But I like Key in the builder said, like I disagree that the Texans was willing to just get rid of him, no matter what it cost. They got a running back in David Johnson that now they got to struggle with that contract that he has. I feel as though that the Eagles had every chance to get him. If you could pay Darius Slay that money, what makes you think you can't pay DeAndre Hopkins?
That's true.
That just makes me cringe a little bit from Eagles fans, because like now you got to go through the draft, and now all these wide receivers is coming off the board, like a Robbie Anderson and Brashard Perriman, and these wide receivers are coming off the board now. There's really nothing in free agency that you can get. Now you really got to get a free agent now you got to definitely get one in the draft. So with the Eagles, I feel like Carson Wentz, I'll be pissed. I'll be pissed off, because I understand that he did throw for 300 yards plus in the last 6 or 7 games that he did.
Yeah, last 7 games.
Yeah, in the last 7 games. And now we looking at it as what? Like come on, Eagles. Now bringing him to the city, knowing that he's not the type of guy that gets into trouble. He's not a diva. He just goes out and he just plays his game.
Yes, and this is exactly what I said, is that because again, Keenan Billman is probably one of the most faithful Eagle fans, and not to mention I have a friend of mine personally who's a diehard Eagle fan, and he agrees with me. But for some of these Philadelphia Eagle fans, and I just am like, I always said this, because a lot of them are like, no, Nick Foles, he won a Super Bowl and all. Anybody that mentions Nick Foles about the Super Bowl run with the Eagles, all of them should just continue to drink their beer. Don't even talk. Nick Foles had an opportunity to be a franchise quarterback years ago, and we all know how that dealt away. Goes to St. Louis, he's not the same quarterback. Goes to Kansas City along with Matt Nagy and he got a little better. But we cannot get it twisted and get distracted because of the fact of Carson Wentz got hurt and Nick Foles came in. He was sharp, and here's the thing you have to remember: they were already stacked before Nick Foles came in to not replace Carson Wentz, but to support him. Okay, there's a difference between replacing and supporting. All right, and so and Carson Wentz, and here was what was interesting about throwing for 300 plus yards in 7 straight games. Carson Wentz literally took the organization on his shoulders and said, "We're making the playoffs, because if we can beat this Dallas team, we're making the playoffs." And sure enough, they did. Dallas disappointed all of us, because this was a team I looked at from roster from top to bottom and the schedule. They should have been a 13-win team, and they disappointed every single Cowboy fan and their season. So for the Philadelphia Eagles to be grinding out despite injuries, despite miscommunications, Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz are probably one of the top in my list of quarterback coach tandems. I mean, he managed to put the team on his back, and sure enough, Philadelphia was still able to make the playoffs.
I'm sorry, y'all. That's like me keeping it mute. I have to make sure I have it correctly here. So Yeah, so when it comes to Carson Wentz, I can see him being mad. I can see him being upset about why we didn't go out and get DeAndre Hopkins just because of what he was traded for. So now my next question is for you, and I know you're going to love this question. I know you're going to love this question, man.
Yes,
And
I
this
am.
question is Teddy Bridgewater an upgrade to the Panthers, knowing that they did go out and sign Robbie Anderson on the wide receiver core. Then
Mhm.
they end up getting Taji Sharp from the Tennessee Titans as well.
Mhm.
So, do y'all think that Teddy Bridgewater is an upgrade to the Panthers than Cam Newton?
Well, here's what's interesting about this. Okay, and I'm gonna say it on my podcast as well, and you guys better tune in. I post it all up on Spotify, but this is what I'm gonna say because I was listening all throughout the radio show this whole week. That's what's literally kept my sanity is listening to sports radio shows all week throughout this whole pandemic. But everybody asks why Jameis Winston and Cam Newton don't have jobs and why Teddy Bridgewater ended up getting a gig. Here's the difference between Teddy Bridgewater and Jameis and Cam. Okay, Teddy under Joe Brady, he he was um he was focused. He was focused and he was willing to work on his skills. Not a lot of people thought about that when in his time in Minnesota. I personally think he's still a number one quarterback in this league, and I still think that he can handle his own. And Teddy Bridgewater, if you saw from last year with New Orleans when Drew Brees went down with that thumb injury, Teddy literally just came in and he didn't even have to be a special quarterback. He just had to be somebody to fill in the role, be productive, and win games. Seriously, win games. That's all Teddy Bridgewater had to do. And him and Sean Payton were able to make that happen. And by the way, he had the best wide receiver in Mike Thomas, and New Orleans was able to make that happen. And that's what kind of caught everybody's eyes is how Teddy Bridgewater performed. He's not a special quarterback like a Patrick Mahomes or a Lamar Jackson. He's a quarterback that produces. You have to look at the completion percentage he has and his quarterback rating. Look, any quarterback will throw for an X amount of yards, but then also the touchdown interception ratio. He is a number one quarterback in this league. And so for him to get a gig with Carolina, and here's what's interesting about this. Carolina is a brand new regime. The brand new owner, you got a brand new coach in Matt Rule, and you also bring in a new quarterback because Carolina was done with Cam. They were absolutely done with Cam. They were willing to brush him off. They were willing to start fresh, clean, new slate, and they needed a guy who's going to trust all of the weapons around him. Look, when people said that, defending Cam, saying he had no support, Christian McCaffrey, who his dad was a wide receiver in the league, and he knows how to run and he knows how to catch. Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore. Stop telling me Cam doesn't have support. Seriously. And if you want my honesty, you want to know why
he had Kelvin Benjamin at a time in his prime.
Kelvin Benjamin at his time in the prime. But here's the other thing though too that you have to realize. You want to know why Carolina was always so competitive during Cam's era. Ron Rivera and that defense. Because Luke Kuechly, Charles Johnson, Thomas Davis, and even at the time, Josh Norman and so many others, they were willing to be competitive. And I felt bad for the defense in Super Bowl 50 because they played their ass off. Seriously, they played their asses off for Cam. And for the fact that Cam showed his true colors the second that Von Miller shook him up and the rest of that secondary for Denver, it showed Cam's true colors. Cam, I've always said, he plays like Russell Westbrook. He can run, he can be athletic, and he's talented. But the problem of it is he can't throw downfield. He only throws really good short and mid-range passes. The second he tries to throw downfield on deep balls, it's not accurate enough. I'm sorry. And if I bursted people's bubbles about Cam, that's the truth. That is the truth about it. And for Teddy Bridgewater to have a job like this under Matt Rule, and here's what's also interesting. The Panthers ended up getting PJ Walker from the XFL. And PJ Walker knows Matt Rule. At the time at Temple, Matt Rule was shifting and he was rebuilding programs in college. So he has a beautiful resume. Rebuilding Temple, and I think at the time rebuilding Baylor. He knows how to take something from scratch and make it better. But this is where Carolina now needs a new identity. They're without Luke Kuechly due to retirement. They moved on from Cam. This is going to be an interesting new process for Carolina. And so you're telling me that Cam's fault, the Panthers lost the Super Bowl.
And I wanted to answer that question.
Well,
I wanted to answer that question. Let's be honest here. We all knew that Denver had the number one defense in the NFL that whole season. And Cam Newton couldn't. One thing about Cam Newton, he's not a good signal caller. He's not a signal caller. He can't make audibles at the line for pass protection.
Yes.
He's just not that type of quarterback. He came out of a college where it was a quarterback run first. And that was the problem. If you look at what happened with Cam Newton after the Super Bowl, don't get me wrong, he was 15-1 when in that year. 15-1 damn near.
And here's what
he's not even above 500 after that Super Bowl. He never got over that Super Bowl hangover. And the difference between the Cam Newton and Teddy Bridgewater, people don't know this, but Teddy Bridgewater is 22-16.
Yes.
As a career at quarterback. He's 22-16. You can't tell me nothing more about it. I think it was time for a change because you got a new owner, you got a new GM, you got rid of your old coach, and you brought in a whole new clean slate. And Cam Newton was the last one to be out.
Absolutely. And here's what I'll also give, because I know Fierce Raider was the one who asked this question, but Fierce Raider, go back to 2015, the second time the Carolina Panthers faced off against the Atlanta Falcons. And I'm going to prove my point. When you watch that second visit between them and the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta, okay, you could tell so much about what's going through Carolina's mindset. That was on Cam. Okay, and here's the other thing. When a ball's dropped, what is the one thing players are going to do? They're going to go after the football. They're not going to let that go. Okay, and that's where Cam, if you really wanted to show your true leadership, you would have dove after it. Show an effort. Don't be afraid of it, because you know what you signed up for, playing football. I don't want to end up hearing about, like it's not Cam's fault with all this. Look, this is where all of us, and what's kind of funny, I heard this on radio, is that all of us kind of get stuck on stats than the M word, maturity. You want to know why Jameis and Cam don't have jobs? It's because of their judgment calls as a quarterback. It's not because of what they do off the field. It's their judgment calls as a quarterback, how they execute. That's why Teddy Bridgewater, Case Keenum, and most of these other quarterbacks have gigs because they're willing to work with it and they're willing to adjust. And they're under systems that work with them.
And at the same time, Cam Newton is a very hard-headed quarterback. He's not going to go into a system where he can't run the football. And that's why he's out of a job. I think Jameis Winston would get a job before Cam Newton just because of that alone. Because of how Cam Newton wants to run the ball first. Right. He wants to run the ball first before he passes. He's been, ever since that Super Bowl hangover, he's been very inaccurate. He's been very selfish. He doesn't think about the team. It's about Cam Newton and what he wants. And that's why Cam Newton is sitting around waiting on a contract, because if you think about it, think about this. Now, you really think you're going to get a max contract knowing that they released you, knowing they don't even know if you're 100% cleared? Mm-hmm. We don't even know if you do go to a team. We don't even know if you can actually play in this upcoming season. But Cam Newton, I used to love him as a quarterback because he has so much determination and drive.
Right.
But now he won the MVP. He took him to the Super Bowl, and he got cocky, and it got in his head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it got completely up into his head. And here's also one thing to think about is between Teddy and between Cam, and I look at this of completion percentage, because Cam, his career completion percentage is 59. What does Cam Newton do with a 59%? He either runs it himself or he can't, and he's not accurate with the football in certain situations.
And you want to talk about in the Super Bowl, at the end of the day, the Denver Broncos was a better football team. Period.
Damn right.
They was a better football team. At the end of the day, Cam Newton folded in the Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
Him and his team. Not just Cam Newton, but the wide receivers, the offensive line, the defense, the special teams. Denver was just a better team overall than the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers were not ready for that Super Bowl. They were not ready for that limelight, and Cam Newton was not ready for that limelight. Understand that he won a national championship in college, but this is the Super Bowl, baby. This is where the big dogs play.
Yeah,
and he was not a big dog that night. So at the end of the day, Denver was the better football team, knowing that Peyton Manning was on a decline, but he made plays when it was needed.
And here's the one thing you have to think about, okay? Because I think all of us kind of get mixed up with it. So I did mention about the quarterback rating for Cam Newton. Now, here's one thing to think about Teddy Bridgewater. What's his career completion percentage? 65. I can gamble with a 65% completion percent. Hell, I mean, the Chargers could have easily got Teddy Bridgewater and not have to gamble with Tyrod Taylor. I will take 65% all day, because what does that tell me as a coach? He's a guy that is willing to create space downfield. He sees the defense and he reads the linebackers. And when he sees his receivers, he's going to find an opening to throw the ball and also spread the field. That's what Teddy Bridgewater was able to do right. Executions as a quarterback. Because we've been having this problem, to be honest, that people have been having concerns about Jimmy G. And it's not, Jimmy G is 70% of his throws, he can make it in this league. But besides the fact, like for most of these quarterbacks, okay, well, we kind of get a little bit twisted on this. We get twisted on certain accolades. Yes, Cam Newton was a Heisman Trophy winner. Yes, Cam Newton was a national championship winner. And yes, Cam was an MVP. But here's the bottom line. And all of us should know this just by working in business. Just because you've earned your stripes from anywhere else, if you're not living up to the expectation, that shows your true colors. And that tells you the type of person that you are in a workplace. Companies, some of them won't care what your accolades are. What it depends on is your maturity, how you handle pressure situations, and your production behind it. That is what matters most. Okay, and trust me, I work in a business, and we service almost 350 customers. What does that depend on us? To making sure all of those customers are taken care of, and even in the pressure times and the dog days of summer. That's what they look for. Okay, and in Cam Newton's position, is he really willing to take those pressures? No. Is he really willing to adjust to be able to keep up with the game? No. Because look, he cares more about fashion than I think that he cares about football. I'll be totally honest with you. That's why I kept saying that the XFL would have been perfect for Cam.
I absolutely agree, man. I absolutely agree. Like, the thing about it is, I feel like he's going to be more of a team leader than Cam Newton was. I think Bridgewater is going to be a team leader, but I think him being under Drew Brees for 2 years really learned a lot about him. And let's not forget that Teddy Bridgewater was a Heisman winner as well. He was just as a Heisman winner, just like Cam Newton. Cam Newton would dominate the XFL, yeah, but it would prove that what type of player I feel like going to the XFL for Cam Newton will humble him.
Absolutely. And again, I think that this also protects his brand. I think it absolutely protects his brand because you have to think about it. For all of us in the chat, does he hate me ring a bell? Former Carolina Panther? You don't think that this would work with Cam Newton? Look, I'm looking at all this. How many teams have signed XFL players? 9. Last time I checked, a few hours ago. 9 teams signed XFL players. You don't think the NFL would want to do the XFL a favor? Think about it. And people kind of worry about, like, I had a friend of mine comment and tell me, the XFL, they won't pay him as much. They're going to pay him decent amount of money because here's what Cam brings to the table. Fashion, like star power. Like, the second he comes into the XFL, do you know how skyrocketing the ratings will go for the XFL? People won't watch the XFL just for their teams, excluding St. Louis, because they're glad they got football back. But everybody's going to watch Cam because remember the times when we had the dab or the super Cam? He could do that in the XFL. He can express himself. But at the same time, it's a time of where he has to really thoroughly examine himself and says, you know what? If I can develop in this league, maybe I'll get a gig in the NFL. It gives you the opportunities. That's why I love the XFL and I love what they've done. And JD, you bring a valid point. Why Colin Kaepernick doesn't even have a job or something. But I ain't even going to be going in a Kaepernick situation. Okay, that's a totally different world. But
yeah, a whole totally different world. But my final take on the Cam Newton situation is that I'm kind of disappointed in Cam Newton, but at the same time, he just need to humble himself. Like, you need to get back to having fun. And Cam does not have fun. He does not have fun anymore. He does it for the money. Mm-hmm. Understand that, yes, is mind you, even though you do go to the XFL, you still got millions that you still being paid by the NFL. What's the point of stepping down to the XFL? You'll bring up the ratings, and the ratings will bring in more people in the stands, and more people will come in the stands. That means more money goes into the organizations, and now the organization in the league can pay players more. It's a business at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And think about it this way. Like, me as a baseball background, like, I see some of these players who play internationally. Like, take, for example, Eric Thames. I mean, the guy comes in as a left-handed power bat in Toronto. Didn't really have much to show, goes to Seattle. In Seattle, he started struggling. And he really had to think of himself, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to now adjust? He goes internationally into Korea and plays in the Korean League. And he went from, I think, literally the skinny guy that I remember to where he's beefed up. And you could say whatever you want to. If you think that he took steroids, you're out of your mind. Like, the guy's naturally built, but he came back into the States on a big time contract that I think, to me, he's earned that. Not deserved. He's earned that because of the fact of he goes somewhere, reevaluates his game, and works to be productive. That's why now he's getting gigs. I think if Cam goes to the XFL and he reevaluates his game, and Fierce Raider, this should be a time where he readjusts his game. Okay, he made it publicly known that he didn't want to be traded, but the thing of it is, Carolina didn't want him. Carolina was willing to brush him off and willing to move off of him. Okay, and that's where I think for Cam and for a lot of these ownerships and general managers, what's the fear is that if you sign Cam, you're going to have to sign him for 4 years. And you have to deal with everything with Cam. That's where I think some of that is a general managing fear. Because the second you bring in Cam, you're bringing in everything of Cam. And that's where I stand on that final opinion.
All right, so what's the next topic you got, brother?
Well, the next topic I got up over here, because we basically cover Cam Newton. And real quick, just kind of something here. is Cam Newton a possibility for the Philadelphia Eagles? I've been hearing about this, and I never thought about that. But if Cam goes to the Philadelphia Eagles, because here's what's interesting. We remembered like the times of when Michael Vick was in Philadelphia and the type of speed and presence that he brought to the team. Even though that was kind of their MO. And being as an Eagles backup, I think that would be interesting because at least it serves as a insurance policy for Carson Wentz, where if he gets hurt, then at least Cam under Doug Peterson, who can reshape and reevaluate his game. I mean, yes, Doug Peterson is pretty much Andy Reid because, yes, he comes from a coaching tree under Andy Reid. That's how it all started. But, yes, he can reevaluate his game. And that's where it'll shed some light on the subject, reevaluate the game, be better. And then if Carson Wentz gets hurt, then, I mean, think about it. The Eagles were able to win with a backup quarterback with Nick Foles. If the Eagles were able to make this right and pay him a little bit cheap, where it's a 1-year deal, I would take it. I would take it as a backup. I'll be honest. And I think that's the same that goes for Jameis Winston go to possibly Pittsburgh.
I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it because he's not going to want to be a backup.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with Cam Newton. Now, would I see Jameis Winston go to Philadelphia because he knows he's going to be a backup? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But Cam Newton going to Philadelphia to be a backup to a younger quarterback, Cam Newton's not ready to do that. He's not mature enough to do that. Like I said, don't get me wrong. I used to love Cam Newton. Cam Newton was one of my type of guys. But at the same time, he's not going to take a backup role. He's not. I don't care what anyone say in this chat. He's not going to take a backup role with Philadelphia. He's not. He's not going to take less money. He thinks he's still a top quarterback in this league. And that is the problem. That's the problem with Cam Newton. I don't see him going to the Eagles. That's just my honest opinion. I don't see it happening. He's going to want a max contract to be a backup.
Yeah, I mean, well, and that's interesting. Will he retire? I don't look out of all the
won't retire.
No, he won't retire.
Yeah, he's not going to retire. Absolutely not.
I don't see that happening. I mean, look, if he's posting up workout videos on social media and everything else, he's not retiring.
Cam Newton is a free agent. He's a free agent, but he's not going to be a backup because a lot of teams don't really need quarterbacks. There's only a few. There's only a few that needs quarterbacks. Not all 32 teams need a quarterback. So, in my honest opinion, as I see it, I mean, even the Miami Dolphins is not even going after him because they stuck on trying to get a Jordan Love or a Tua or anything of that nature. Cam's not going to play this year. That's just my personal. He's not going to play this year. The New England Patriots don't want to put up with, they don't want to put up with him as a person, not as a player that. I mean, he's not the Patriot way type of quarterback.
No.
He's not. And I don't see him going to L.A. with the Chargers because at the end of the day, Cam Newton is going to want that big money and nobody's going to spend that big money. And I say, he's not. They saying that Cam is going to play this year. I don't see it because number one, if Tom Brady wasn't getting paid top money quarterback money at New England, what makes you think Cam's going to get top money with them, knowing that Tom Brady wasn't even getting that?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, again, that with New England, that's where they struggle with the most, and why that they didn't kiss Tom Brady's ass to give him what he wants. And that's where if Cam Newton was going to New England, he would have had to deal with Bill Belichick and with the slogan, do your job. I feel like that doesn't really gel well with Cam.
It's not.
It's not. And here's the point I will make too. As a diehard Charger fan, which I don't always like to show my fandom on live stream or behind the mic on a podcast, but the Chargers don't need another guy who has a 60 or below quarterback completion percentage. I just don't think the Chargers are willing to gamble with that. Okay. And that's where, because with Tyrod is not the future. I've been saying this multiple times. Everybody keeps freaking out about the Chargers, still laughing and mocking them. But here's the thing. I've said it before on our podcast show, and I'll say it again, is that if the Chiefs were just all about winning, the Chiefs would have never let go of Alex Smith, and they probably would have never got Patrick Mahomes. Understand that. And JD's right. Tyrod will only win you a few games. That's like guys like Alex Smith and Jacoby Brissett. That is what Tyrod is in that circle. So the question of it is as well, do I see them getting Tua? Well, just a side note, I ended up hearing something interesting, and you can look at this. I know it's on the herd, but I wasn't paying attention most to him. I was paying attention to Daniel Jeremiah, one of the analysts who's been covering the draft. Here's what's interesting, because we do have some teams going in that need quarterbacks. And in the Chargers situation, you know what's the best pick to trade for? That pick from the Detroit Lions, number 3. Number 3 is probably the best trade up.
I swore I did that in my mock draft.
Yes, you did.
I did it in my mock draft, man.
But listen to this. Here's what's interesting, because there were speculations about all these quarterbacks within the draft. Now, what Daniel Jeremiah ended up suggesting, because if the Chargers trade up for number 3 in that draft, he's thinking that the Chargers would use number 3. And what you put on your mock draft, because you mentioned about Tua, he mentioned about them possibly getting Isaiah Simmons as possibly as a guy that fits the role for linebacking position, gives them extra juice, because I think it's interesting, because who knows if Denzel Perryman will stay healthy. That is an issue I have been having for years now, because Denzel Perryman, I like him, but if he doesn't stay healthy, that's a big concern. And I think at that point, they're going to let go of him very easily if he gets hurt again. But he mentions about getting Isaiah Simmons, and they've been talking and speculating that if they go and make another trade to get somewhere in the middle, they could potentially draft Jordan Love. So think of it this way. They get a double whammy in the first round to go and lock in guys like Isaiah Simmons and Jordan Love. What do you think of that?
I don't see it happening. I do not see it happening. I see y'all moving up to get a quarterback, but a linebacker like Isaiah Simmons, you can still go out and get Clowney right now if you really had the money for it. For real, for real. Me personally, if you go out and get a quarterback, you're solidified for your future. Like you said, you really don't have a quarterback for the future. You really don't. So if you pass up on a quarterback to get a linebacker and you get a Jordan Love that might be a bust, then you're like, damn, I should have got to it at that spot. That's just me and my personal opinion, because I feel like Jordan Love is going to fall to the New England Patriots. I really think he is. I think it's the best fit for him. He has a lot of upside, and he plays in the style that the Patriots want him to play. The Chargers need a quarterback right now, and I feel like if Tua's there, or even I know this probably might be a long shot, but one of the most underrated quarterbacks in this draft is Jake Fromm. If it's not Jake Fromm that goes to the Patriots, it's Jordan Love. Both of them can play the Patriot way. But you got to go get Tua if you're the Chargers. Because if you ain't going to get him, then Miami's going to get him, and then Miami might end up winning that draft if y'all don't go get him.
Well, I think it'll be interesting when, again, and this is what's going to be exciting, because now with free agency done, it's now opening up the floodgates now for what the possibilities could happen in the draft. Because that was the most important thing. We talked about draft even before free agency started. Now with free agency over, this carousel is continuing to shift. So JD mentioned something to me, is the Chargers have a reputation for not paying guys. Is that a result of them thinking they can draft into a championship, or are they just cheap? Well, listen, we know about the the Spanos family. Okay, the Spanos family has a reputation of not overpaying guys. That's just how they are. You can think about it. The Spanos family didn't even invest to have a healthy offensive line for Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers. And they finally did it, which really just blows my mind about it. And I'm happy and excited that it happened, but it's like, couldn't we have done this years ago? But these are also the same people who fired Marty Schottenheimer after a 14-2 season, which that made no damn sense. And, there's just a lot of complications when it comes to, the Spanos family and the Chargers organization. Because the one concern that I do have is with Joey Bosa. And there were talks and a little bit of him potentially that if something was to go wrong with the Chargers, if they don't pay him, he may go and turn around like Derek Watt goes to Pittsburgh with his brother TJ, and Joey could go and team up with Nick Bosa, his brother. That was the conversation, and that's the one where I was really scared about, because if that was to potentially happen, that's where the Chargers need to win now. They need to win now in order to make that happen. You fixed up the offensive line. You boosted the defensive line, which, by the way, as you said, you mentioned about Clowney. I don't see them potentially going and getting Clowney. I've been hearing rumors about Seattle wanting to retain him because the Colts now already have their defensive end in DeForest Buckner. But to me, Melvin Ingram, Joey Bosa, Linval Joseph, and Jerry Tillery, I think they're just fine with the line. I don't think the line is really the issue at hand. The thing of it is that the Chargers, coming into that number 6 pick, they got to do something right. They got to do something right in the draft in order for because I'm telling you, I'm going to say this in my podcast, that anybody that comes under center for the Chargers is going to have a hell of a time with it. They got an offensive line that works, weapons they can utilize, and everybody works perfectly. But I do agree that they need to have a future franchise quarterback, whether it's Tua or it's Joe Burrow or it's Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, maybe even Jake Fromm. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think that I'm not saying it can, but if they did make a move like that to where they go and get an underrated player like Jake Fromm, that would be interesting. That'd be interesting in my opinion. But for quarterbacks going into this draft, Cincinnati's not giving up that number 1 pick. They're going to go and get Joe Burrow because they feel like Joe Burrow is going to save their franchise. Miami obviously tanked down, may go trade up and go and get Tua because they honestly, I think Miami earned the right to have Tua with the way that their defensive played. Brian Flores, making moves and making things happen. They earned it. They earned that right. And then Justin Herbert, there's been off and ons about him, but he can definitely throw a hell of a ball. But again, this draft is going to be exciting. I can't wait any longer for it to start up.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very interesting what the draft is going to look like and how things going to go, knowing that everything is virtual at this moment. But I think you you asked the last question, or I did.
I think
you did.
I think I did. Yeah.
Okay, so the final question of the night, y'all, and I'll save this one for last because this is going to be an interesting debate.
Oh, this is the best for last.
Huh?
I said this is the best for the last.
Yeah, this is the best of the last. Absolutely. So the question for everybody in the chat and the question for Jake himself. We talk about right now. It could be from any sport. What athlete isn't, cause like I can say, how can I say it? It was what is that athlete that, hold on, let me go to my question.
An athlete that reminds you of Michael Jordan right now.
Right now. What athlete in any sport, baseball, hockey, basketball, football, reminds you of Michael Jordan right now?
I could tell you right now, honestly, it's kind of tough. This is actually one of the best questions to end this show, but I mean, let's think about it real quick, because I'm sure that that's giving, the fans here, that's live commenting at this point, giving them some time to think about it a little bit and examine it. But think of Michael Jordan. Okay, Michael Jordan came in at a time that, the Detroit Pistons, they had their dynasty, and Michael Jordan comes in with Chicago, where it was only just him, and he didn't even have his tandem until later on with guys like Scottie Pippen, Steve Kerr, uh, Dennis Rodman, and a lot of these guys, and having one of the best coaches in Phil Jackson. So for Michael, his talent was raw. He had raw talent, natural shooter. He just knew exactly where to place himself whenever anybody, the team needed an important shot. He was going to put it up. And again, everybody talked about, the 6-0 championships. Of course, everybody's going to talk about that. And God, it's kind of difficult for that, because if there's anybody that I can think of, I'll say this. I just
you want to think about it before I say who I have to say?
I'm gonna think about that, because that is a great question, and it's so tough, but I love it.
Now, in the last 2 years, I could say Patrick Mahomes, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because Patrick Mahomes in the last 2 years overcame adversity. He was a penalty away of being a 2-time Super Bowl champion, losing to the New England Patriots. And the guy revolutionized the quarterback position again. Something that a lot of quarterbacks came in the league and didn't do. This guy is throwing no-look passes in football that we don't see that much. So I go we talk about in the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, I wouldn't even say Lamar Jackson, because Lamar Jackson still have a lot to prove as a thrower before you put him in that conversation. Right. So Patrick Mahomes in the last 2 years, I could say he reminds me of the Jordan. Yeah, I think about it. Penalty away from being a 2-time Super Bowl champion. He came back. Matter of fact, he won the MVP last year. Mm-hmm. Came back. Got hurt. Was out for a few games. Taking the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. Bringing them down from 10 points in the fourth quarter. It being Super Bowl MVP. Now, you cannot tell me that's not a Jordan mentality type of player in Patrick Mahomes. But if you want to go off style, of a player that has a style like Michael Jordan, it's Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard, he's about shooting the basketball and playing defense. That's exactly what Jordan did. And Jordan would dunk on you when he wants to dunk on you, and Kawhi Leonard would dunk on you when he wants to dunk on you. But if you want to look at style of play, Kawhi Leonard kind of reminds me of a Michael Jordan. I wouldn't say a Zion, I wouldn't say a Luka, because if you look at it, Jordan didn't really talk too much trash. Kawhi Leonard don't talk too much trash either. So when it comes to, you got it.
I think about this now that I actually had some time to think about it. But one that I can think of right now, I truly think I absolutely agree with you with Kawhi Leonard, and the fact that, here's what's interesting about this, because Michael Jordan finally got at least the tandem, as I mentioned, to defeat a dynasty like Detroit. The Detroit Pistons was a hell of a team at the time, and that was a team that Chicago could not get past. But Kawhi Leonard, now a lot of people can end up arguing about this because of the fact that he's already come from a dynasty that had Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker. Yes, but think about it. He was able to disrupt the Miami dynasty, and he's been able to disrupt the Golden State dynasty. So I could very much see that. in him. I was almost going to say, and I think this may be a little bit harder, but part of me that, in the baseball background, I think the person that reminds me of Michael Jordan a lot is honestly Mike Trout. I understand Mike Trout has not won a championship yet, but I'm not getting into that. Mike Trout has stayed consistent for years since 2012, a rookie of the year, 3-time MVP. And, he came off of an injury, the first time that's ever happened in his career. He's never had an injury before. But by the time Trout came back into the lineup, he still stayed consistent. His numbers still stayed at 300. He was still a guy hitting 30-plus bombs, and he was driving in runs. He evolutionized the game of baseball, the way that we view it. He's the Michael Jordan of baseball. The fact that I know a lot of people can say, at the time, like back in the day when we looked at Ken Griffey Jr., the kid, but when you look at Mike Trout, he's a once-in-a-generational player, and his generation is now. And I am hoping, I'm crossing my fingers, somebody get this man a damn World Series. I'm serious, because the Angels are wasting away his prime and his talent as of right now. And if that don't happen, God, how exactly are we going to remind ourselves about Mike Trout? Seriously, best baseball player in history. That's the way that I look at it. I think Mike Trout definitely is a spitting image of MJ. The fact that he comes back from an injury to still stay consistent and still keep his numbers. You have to think of how Michael Jordan came back after his stint of baseball. Comes back on a day before my birthday. You know this, Darian. But the fact that he comes back and he still plays like the Michael Jordan we knew and love was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. But I think that's what I'm going to go with. I think Mike Trout reminds me a lot of MJ.
Damian Estrada, only reason why I'm comparing it to Jordan, if you look at the play style, look at the play style of Kawhi Leonard. Y'all say all this load management and all that. I don't care about the load management. I care about what he did on the basketball court. He went to a Toronto team and brought them their first ever championship. Something a lot of players in the NBA cannot do. So look at what Chicago did. I don't know how many Chicago's had, how many championships they had before Jordan got there. I don't think they had any.
None.
They had none, and Jordan brought them 6.
That was the earliest times, and then the later times.
Right. So I that's why I make the comparison, because of how they play style was. Jordan play style was a little bit more flashier than Kawhi Leonard, but Kawhi Leonard and Jordan's defense is unprecedented. You can't say nothing about their defense. No. Offensively, you can say a little bit of, Kawhi Leonard getting that Jordan fadeaway shot. If y'all didn't notice, he is getting that fadeaway jump shot, but he is so clutch at times, and Jordan can be clutch on a consistent basis. It just give me that similarity as well. So
I'm gonna say this. I think what's going through some of the people's minds, Darian, is I think some of them, and I'm not saying all of them, but some of them may be stuck with the fact of, what if we say 5 years from now, Steph Curry is a Jordan? I'm going to disagree with that, because look, Steph Curry, we know and love. I love his shot, and I love the fact that he can stay consistent in 3 points, but it's hard to say, because at the same time, defense can have a toll, and Jordan was able to play defense. That's what kind of, I think, separate.
He was able to hand check.
He was able to hand check, exactly. And so, but think of it this way: if Klay Thompson, if Steph Curry had the same defensive touch as Klay Thompson, maybe that would change. But it's too much for me to think that. Again, Steph Curry does kind of do something. He elevates players. That's how he was able to bring in KD, and how he was able to work well with Klay and Draymond. He's able to elevate players. Imagine it if he comes back and, he plays with guys like Andrew Wiggins, or he would have played with, D'Angelo Russell. It's interesting. But to me, personally just don't see it.
Now, Water King is saying that why are we comparing legends to players like Kawhi Leonard? The question was that what athlete can you compare? Can you compare to Jordan as of right now? So players right now, like any athlete, that's the question. It's not just basketball. It's not just football. It could be any athlete from any sport that gives you that Jordan type of instinct, that Jordan type of mentality, that starstruck.
Like, here's what's interesting. Like, you look at soccer, who would remind you of Jordan more, Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi? Like that's kind of the interesting topic. If you were talking about soccer, who poses more of the stardom like that?
Right, and I can absolutely agree there. I can agree there, but yeah, this was definitely an interesting show, I could say. So, what final takes that you have before we end this show and sign off?
Well, my final takes from the show. I mean, first of all, I thought this was awesome, and I think looking from the live comments, I think everybody loved it. I think a lot of people absolutely enjoyed it. I think they're kind of thinking, "Oh, this is interesting," but this week itself has been like, it's been feeding us sources. Like, I'm telling you, I love it. Darian, I know you love it. I think a lot of our colleagues love it, that the fact that we get sources at this time, even talking about the NFL. But right now, my only final take is, and I know that this will be an interesting topic we'll talk about in the future, but we're currently going with the state where the NBA and the NHL are in a pause. And people don't know what they want to do. I've been getting news reports from the NHL Players Association about certain players like Alex Ovechkin and such, who sent in letters to the NHL and said, we need to play the damn season already. But because the hard part is in hockey, they need to have a Stanley Cup. That's what's kind of the hard part. They got to have a Stanley Cup winner. Otherwise, it would have been money less spent for, a trophy that's bigger than, than the Lombardi and bigger than, the NBA championship and even the World Series. So, and in the NBA's situation, I think I told this to you as well in our last podcast, was, about them going back to starting the season on Christmas and then carrying over all the way to June and July, because at least, people aren't going to watch baseball until postseason happens, and people aren't going to really, watch too much of hockey until Stanley Cup playoffs happen. But in the NBA, because there's so many primetime games and so many hype ups of games, people are going to pay attention to it. And here's what's interesting at it. Because in baseball, when we get to October and it's postseason, they'll have their time. Then they're done. Then you have NBA creeping in. And by the time we get to March, everybody's going to look into college hoops and March Madness. They'll have their time in NBA and the NBA. And so will still have their season until they get to the summertime. They have their championships and they finish it up. Then you go right into the NFL. And until they finish up by February, it'll go right back over to the NBA. I looked at it from a ratings and viewer standpoint, because not a lot of people want to watch Major League Baseball for 162 games a year. That's the truth. That is the truth behind it. I speak it from a baseball background. It's just not going to happen. NBA has too many ratings than baseball does. That's why I think if they changed it, it'd be interesting. I know that we've had conversations with, the strike at the time, and you're right. But here's the thing: baseball's in a disaster, because you're not going to watch it on television. You're either going to go and watch it, and that's about it.
Well, my final take that goes on it is just hope everybody stays safe when it comes to sports, yes. When it comes to people in the chat, everybody that's across the U.S., please stay safe, because coronavirus is no joke. People think it's a joke In certain cities, it is not. People think it's a hoax. It's not.
Mhm.
It's not at all. So with me, I just need everybody to just take care of themselves. Wash your hands, take showers, make sure your hygiene is good. You go out, protect yourself if you need to go out.
Yes.
I mean, you're not gonna be able to do nothing this weekend because ain't gonna be no bars open, ain't gonna be no clubs open. So hopefully you got liquor to do what you do. But as far as the aspect, though, I want to look on the brighter side of things. Congratulations to Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, Christian Wood, all of them people that Sean Payton, everybody that had the coronavirus is cleared. Now
Mhm.
we got to pray for Doris Burke because she came out and said that she was positive for coronavirus. Hopefully she
Yes.
could come back and be herself again.
Absolutely. And don't forget too, guys, keep Carl Anthony Towns' family in your prayers as well, because we know that this is a difficult time for him and for the family with his mom with the coronavirus and being in an induced coma. It's it's hard to really imagine that. And I'll be totally honest. For my family, my mother is dealing with thyroid, and this is no joke. This is literally what makes me think of my mother. If she got hit with this coronavirus and maybe even much, much more. But keep them in your prayers. I also heard too that apparently his father now has the virus. So this is a tough time for Carl Anthony Towns. But pray for him, pray for the family. They really, really do need it. And guys, I will tell you this. Um, that for both Darian and I to be sitting here and to be talking about sports. Listen, we know what's going on in the world. We know what's happening. We don't need to be reminded so much about, you know, every single possibility because we know that this is a serious matter. We just do not want to end up draining our minds, and that's what makes us dig in from what was sane to now we're in the insane. And that's where, for all of you guys, I want to thank everybody who came into this first episode because you know what? Darian and I are planning to do much, much more. We are. And for your guys' feedback, because I know for some of you, wherever and however you may be watching us today, um, I hope all of you are safe. I hope all of you guys stay healthy and clean, and support one another. And that's what's great about our loyal fans, the fact that they're supporting us, loving our content, and just to be able to just kind of relax, uh kind of clear our minds off. I mean, to me, doing sports and talking about it is my sanity. That's my personal thing. But I hope for all of you, I hope that you guys loved it, enjoyed it, subscribe to both of our shows, and our social media platforms. We really do appreciate it, guys, and we love to hear from you, the fans. All of your takes, all of your comments. It appreciates all of us.
Yes, absolutely. Please go subscribe to Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva. His links are in the description. His Instagram and his Twitter is all in the description with mine as well. And like I said, this is y'all first time ever being at both of our YouTube pages. We would suggest that you subscribe and hit the bell button for both of ours. We both put out great content as well. So we do thank y'all for tuning in. We do thank y'all for being here. We will be doing this probably some other days as well, but this most likely is going to be Friday nights around the same time every Friday. So please tune in, and we thank y'all for tuning in, and we'll see y'all sometime this week, and we'll see y'all next Friday as well.
Yes, take care of yourselves, and guys, also too, any of you guys currently working, we appreciate you guys. Stay safe, stay healthy, and help out one another. You guys are amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep up the great work. But see you guys soon.